Hi, welcome to the Artist Spotlight with Theater Director Jane Anderson and Mara Hannell, Trey Everett, and me, Kristen Eggerling. We're doing this Artist Spotlight to talk about our exhibit that we've got right now at our gallery at Northland Community College, Technical College in Thief River Falls. So maybe Trey, you want to introduce yourself? Then we can go around and Jane can talk a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm Trey Everett. I'm the showcase specialist at the Northwest Minnesota Arts Council, and so I work with galleries. And so I had a chance to talk a lot with Jane and some other people as we put together this gallery and set it up. And so I'm excited to be here.
Mara, do you want to say?
Yeah, I can say a little bit. So I'm Mara Hannell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Minnesota Arts Council. We had a gallery that was not going to happen. So then I mentioned to Trey that this would be a good idea because we have several arts groups in our area, nonprofit theater groups that do youth theater as part of a big drive of what they do in the year and try to use that as a feeder for their adult programs, as well as just train youth in theater aspects. And my two boys were part of two of the groups that were in our area. They started out being in theater with children's theater in Warren with a traveling troupe. And then they moved on to try out and be part of the STARS program in Thief River Falls. So I'm sort of going to wear the hat of administrator as well as parent, and how that went, kind of involving my own youth in the theater aspects in our region.
Hey, Jane.
Yes. So I'm Jane Anderson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Thief River Falls Area Community Theater. And Mara, I just have to say, those boys of yours, I'd like to clone them. That was a great bunch of kids coming through at that time. And I feel like our youth programs do more than just train kids in theater. I think you're right. It is a feeder program. We're actually starting to see the results of that in our adult programs now with kids who've gone through our programs. But what I see is what it does for kids is confidence and just sort of their self-esteem. So it's really an interesting kind of a little venue and an ongoing project. We've been in operation with the kids now for 7 years, and it's always an experience, and we're starting to learn a lot about it.
That's great. Do you want to talk a little bit about, were you in theater as a youth, and what your experiences were and how that impacts you now?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in this area. I grew up 5 miles west of Thief River Falls on a farming family. My parents really didn't know anything about theater or music. It just was always something that I was interested in for as long as I could remember. And so I really got my start in the school system here. I was so fortunate through my whole K-12 experience here. I had some of the best music teachers that I could imagine. I don't think I could have gone anywhere else, and I had them in succession. My elementary teacher, Jeannie Harger, was fabulous. My middle school teacher, John Husted, he's the one that really started me on stage. He allowed us as 8th graders, if you can imagine, he basically just let us do a full-scale show. We did The King and I. And I'd never really been in a play before. I'd been in some little sketches and things through 4-H and through church and whatever. But he basically just set us free and let us do the show. He directed, but he didn't over direct. He kind of let us figure it out on our own. And it was such an impactful experience for me. And that's kind of was my springboard into my interest into musical theater and performing. And I tell you, in 8th grade, that show changed me. It changed me from from being like this kid, like, ooh, intimidated by everything, to I can do this. This is something I can do. This is my power. This is my, my superpower. This is what I do. So after that, I went to high school. I had David Morgan as a choir director who also did musicals. He was a master. And then I fell into, I swear, this is, luck has followed me everywhere. My senior year in high school, I sang in the regional solo contests through the choir and whatnot. And the judge happened to be John Keston from Bemidji State University, where I was planning on going to college. And he judged me. And then afterwards he said, oh, well, do you need a voice teacher? Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. So he put me in his studio. I didn't know him from Adam. I liked his accent. He was from the UK. Thought he was kind of a cool man. Well, when I got to Bemidji State, he transformed me. He tore my voice apart and built it back up again and really taught me how to sing. He just passed away within this last year. He was in his 90s. He was a remarkable man. And at the time I thought, well, he's just my voice teacher, whatever. But he had this long history of success on the West End stages in London. He performed in Sweet Charity with Juliet Prowse and was really kind of, he was kind of a big deal. But he was a wonderful teacher. He was an absolute master. And I performed in everything that I could in college. Operas, musicals. We were sometimes required to even work backstage on sets and props and those kinds of things. And which I didn't really like at that time. I was like, I really want to perform, but you had to do it. So I did it. It was part of a class. And I realize now how much I learned from that. I probably should have done more. But so those experiences, I feel like I couldn't have been luckier. I couldn't have grown up anywhere else and had better musical training, I don't think, which prepared me, for what I do today in so many things.
I can talk a little bit about Kristen and Trey about growing up in theater myself, just a little bit as, a person, like when I was younger. So my theater experience came through dance mainly. So I was part of a dance group that did, Jane, voice lessons as part of it. If you wanted to be like a more well-rounded performer, if you wanted to go into performing arts as a career or do more with community theater. So then I was already singing in high school and being part of theater there. And I was actually cast as the lead role in 9th grade in our musical. I believe not necessarily that I was the most talented, but I was the most confident to pull off the role. Like, how as a director, you can kind of get a feel for who will memorize and do the work you need. And so that kind of built a quick skill set in me around how to, play a lead role. I did give my regards to Broadway. I was that gal in that show. And it was interesting to do that. And still to this day, Larry D'Amico, who was part of the start of Summer Arts Stages, he always would talk about that one of his first shows in middle school, he cast me as his lead because of my dance background being young, that I'd been on stage and I knew how to not be nervous about that in many ways. And then because of dance in an interesting way, then they started to do some musicals that had dance in them as part of their repertoire that they would put on for the dance recitals. So then we would do excerpts from Cats or things like that. And then I would be in those roles as a high schooler. So that was really interesting, I think, to think about the performing arts and what it kind of builds you into related to public appearances and being able to be comfortable in front of an audience and all of that. Even if it's not your long-term wheelhouse, it sure builds a lot of skills that you can use in your life all the time, and then because of dance, once I graduated from college, I went back to Thief River and they learned that. So then I was back involved in dance, and then that became in the background of theater, doing choreography and all of that, so not necessarily on stage, but supportive, in the director role of choreography and what that is in musicals more than anything. And then as a young woman did that for many, many years. So yeah, it's probably, I think we did here in Warren, like 10 years of musicals I was involved in and helping the kids with the choreography part. So, so yeah, it's interesting to think through. And I don't know, Jane, like in Thief River, do some of your kids that are in your program come from a dance background? Because there's pretty strong dance in Thief.
Yeah, we do. We have some kids that are involved in dance studios here. And then our choreographer actually owns a dance studio. Lacey Semino owns a dance studio. So she sometimes brings kids in from that perspective. And like when we did Anything Goes a couple of years ago, she sort of brought this group of strong dancers together to serve as, the main dancing the four girls. And that was fantastic, because then she could take those girls to her studio, work with them on that, and then bring them back into the theater, and they'd be, pretty well ready to go. One thing that I wanted to mention to you, Mara, I thought it was really interesting when you talked about Larry D'Amico. Is that how you say his last name?
I say D'Amico. Yeah,
D'Amico. And I don't know him, but I just remember reading about him in the Grand Forks Herald. So it's interesting. I didn't know that you had such a strong connection to him. But, he cast you not only for your talent, but for your confidence. And I feel, especially with kids, there's kids that have raw bones talent, and we can see it coming, but we're very careful about how we cast kids, as careful as we can possibly be. I mean, you can't know everything, but I think when you cast kids, you do them a disservice if you overcast them. So if you've got a kid coming in that's got a really great voice, but has no background and lacks confidence, the last thing that you want to do is overcast them, because it could just kill them. It's too much. So we usually, depending on what's going on and who shows up, sometimes kids will just come in like, wow, confident, and just blow us away in auditions. Even if we've never seen them before, we look at that and say that confidence level is totally castable. But we'll have other kids come in and we'll say, it might be smart to just give them a year in either a smaller part or even chorus before we move them up, just to let them get, kind of feel their sea legs. Because I've also seen kids sometimes, not in our shows so much, but who have just been intimidated throughout. And they'll do the show, they'll do fine, but they don't go back. They're done. My own kid was that way. And I learned a lesson from that. He was too young and he got cast in a huge part. He did it, but he said, I'm never doing that again. So I don't want to do that to someone else's kid. I'm in for the long haul. I want longevity with our kids. And for the most part, it works pretty well, I think.
Well, and I've talked with you, Jane, before about that there's some kids that absolutely want a big role, and they can be heartbroken, and Spencer can feel that way. My son Spencer, he can feel like, oh, I thought I would get this and I didn't, but then he leans into like the character role or something. Like he has a lot of fun there. And then other kids, they don't have that. Like they enjoy those smaller roles, and they want to be chorus. Like they want to be part of the group, but they don't necessarily want all the commitment of that lead role, and they might work into that as an adult, but they don't quite have that yet. But they're not going to check the box that I want the lead role. So I like how a lot of you when boys were applying into auditions, that you can kind of say that, like, what's their expectation, like what's their desire, and some will just say lead role, and then others will say, some little line or a little tiny singing part or something, so.
Yeah. Well, the one, I'll give you an illustration. We had a little guy, this is many years ago. He was very young. He was auditioning, or he came to auditions for the children's, excuse me, the children's program. And he didn't know if he wanted to audition. He was very shy. And his mom said, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're here. And I said, excuse me, why don't you just watch for a while and see what you think? Just sit with your mom and watch. And after it was all over, I said, we could get these people out of here and you could just audition for me, and your mom can stay here if you want her to. What do you think? Sing happy birthday. So he did, and he wasn't very good. He was scared, but we put him in the chorus. We put him in the, small chorus part. He didn't have any lines. And he didn't say much. He was so quiet. I thought, I don't know if this kid is enjoying himself. We'll probably never see him again. But, we gave it a shot. He came back to auditions the next year. Well, first of all, he'd grown, and I think he'd gotten glasses. And I honestly didn't recognize him at first. But he was partly, I think it was because he all of a sudden he had a confidence about him. He was ready to audition. He had prepared. He knew what to do now, and he knew what he wanted. And so, yeah, absolutely. We cast him in a little bit larger role. It still wasn't a huge role. It wasn't a lead, but it was a talking role, and he did well. He's still with us now. He gets very good roles. He gets leading roles. And sometimes you have to kind of like hold him down at rehearsals because he's so exuberant, which is wonderful. And that's where we want to be with kids. We want them to just, flourish, grow.
I think the other thing, like, that I've noticed with different activities throughout the region is some of the groups set kind of a little lower bar for the kids than you guys do in STARS. So it would be nice to kind of in this little segment here, in case people are listening, to talk about that, how you can ask for quite a bit out of youth if you really prepare them for it, and they will they'll come prepared and just hit the ground running, so I think some people don't think youth can put on the quality of a show that they actually have within their wheelhouse if they embrace it as an intense time to do the best we possibly can by performance night,
Yes, I would love to talk about that. So in our program, as I alluded to, but I'll explain it, we have two separate groups. The younger group are current second graders through fifth graders. And then the older group are sixth graders through current 11th graders. So they're actually, by the time they come to us, they're technically 12th graders. They've just graduated from 11th grade. So we have these two groups, and we hold auditions in the spring. We cast the show, and even before we cast it at auditions, and then again when we cast it, we ask them to commit to dates and times in the summer. So it is required that they are at all rehearsals and all performances. Now, how we try to soften that a little bit is we work really hard by analyzing the shows to see how few rehearsals we could put them together in. So we'll do a show like we did with the younger kids this past summer. We did Annie Kids, which runs, I think, about 45 minutes or so. And so you look at that, you look at the technical, the difficulties of the show, and then basically scale the number of 4-hour rehearsals you need. So I think we did that show in 10 4-hour rehearsals. So it's very concentrated blocks. Beauty and the Beast is that's a big show. I think that one was it 13 or 14 rehearsals. But what we do then, so we require all kids to be there for all rehearsals, because if you've got kids hopping in and out, you can't get anything done. For instance, if you choreograph a number or you block a scene and you have 1 or 2 kids missing, the next time you come back, either those kids are clueless and wandering around in the middle of the scene, trying to watch everybody else's feet to know what the dance looks like, or you have to basically start all over with everyone and catch that kid up. So we're kind of tough on that. And parents ask me all the time, can you go to camp in the middle of it? No, I'm sorry. We just can't do that. But the other thing that we do then is we cast them and we make up packets, just yellow manila envelopes. We put their script in there. We put their score in there of music. We put in a CD of the music so they can hear it and practice it at home. I also send out an online link now. We have the ability to do that. We put in another schedule and any other things that might help them. And then we basically tell them, when you come to the first rehearsal, you need to know the show. You need to understand the show. You need to understand your part. Now, you don't have to have it completely memorized, but you should start memorizing your lines. You should start memorizing your songs. You need to, you must. And they do. They come very well prepared. It is always amazing to me because I'm always nervous before the first day, thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be a shambles? Did we not put enough, rehearsal days in? Are we, is this just going to be a mess? But they come to rehearsal, and as a group, they know what's going on. We always do a read through, but they already know. They kind of know the basis of the story, and they've analyzed their characters in a way, and that they've memorized a lot of their lyrics and their script. And so we really kind of start off with a bang. And the other thing that we do, which is really different than any other group that I think I've ever run into, is we have a team of directors. We have 4, sometimes 5 adults with performance backgrounds which enables us when we're all at rehearsal, we can split those kids up into 3, 4, sometimes 5 different groups if we have to, and rehearse them all at the same time and then come back together. So we could rehearse, we could have somebody on stage blocking a scene. We could have somebody in the music room working on maybe some small group parts or solos or duets or whatever needs to be done that day. We've even had people out on the sidewalk on a nice day doing choreography. We could have somebody in the lobby just running lines and working on character. And so what we get done in 4 hours is, it's different than I remember 4-hour rehearsals when I was in high school, where everybody'd show up and 90% of us would sit in the auditorium while the other 10% were on stage. Mm-hmm. And then we'd switch. And, I guess we didn't mind it, but we had to have so many rehearsals. It used to take us 3 to 4 months to put a show together. And so for us, because we demand that the students are there, then we feel like if they're all there, we can get this done. So our scheduling is kind of a logistical nightmare, but it works. It works really well. And I always tell people, I will never put you on stage until you're ready. That's it's like, I'm not going to throw that kid out there not knowing what they're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so we ride them hard. We make them work. And they are so proud of themselves that it's worth it. They realize that the work that they have put in I mean, 4 hours on a summer day when it's, nice outside, you've got stuff to do, is a long time. But they do it, and I've never heard any complaints from kids or parents. I've never heard them say, those rehearsals are too long. My kid hates it. They're good with it because it works.
Well, I think the other thing as a parent that I've noticed is it has this like bring and show your talent feel. Like people show up almost day one as kids, showing that they read through and not necessarily act, but they're engaged, and then I think the confidence builder around that ensemble, the group of kids that are all in the thing, when you bring and show your talent relatively quickly. Like if you have been in plays a lot, then almost right off the bat, you show that company, this is what we do. This is what we do as kids. We don't stand back. We just bring it. And then that for Austin, my son Austin in high school in Warren, has made him check the box. I can handle a lead for a long time. And it also helps him show up in a character that's not the lead role sometimes. And he will be the person that the audience is talking about, because of a program that's rich for youth, that develops their theater skills, builds him knowing how to portray a character no matter what I'm played. And he has mannerisms and facial expressions and body language when he doesn't have any lines. Like he's engaged in his character from curtain opening to curtain closing, which is a whole different aspect for young actors, for them to understand. He played the worm in the earthworm right now in James and the Giant Peach this last year. And he was able to have that nervous, anxious worm character show up the whole play. And he had the little children just rolling, wondering what he was going to do next, So I think that's cool about even kids that don't stay in the same company. Like the Thief River Falls kids, they're in the group and then they do things, and then they stay together a little bit. They keep that company. But the kids that are these stragglers, they go back to their community and they bring what they learned, and then they try to get other kids to kind of show up too, And I know Kristen with Finn, you talked about that too. He would do his things and then come back to Hallock, and he definitely was able to pull more theater out of other boys that were part of it because of his desire to show his talent right away too, so.
Absolutely. I think they learn from one another. If you have usually an older kid who really is confident and good on stage, the younger kids or the kids who are newer and don't really, understand yet how this all works, they learn from them, and they come back subsequent years and they bring it with them. They get it. They learn it. What you were talking about, being a character from the second the curtain opens to the second that it closes. We work so hard on that, especially with group scenes. We call it stage face. And rather than just standing, when you're not doing anything on stage, looking around the audience, engage, give me stage face. This is how you actually do it. If you want to look like you're paying attention to somebody, you open your mouth a little bit. You don't just ever just, and we work really hard on that. And we do things, we have little exercises that we do with the kids. One is like body positioning. Kids are not aware of what their bodies are doing sometimes, or how they are in relation to others. Well, we have adults that don't either. It's just something you don't think about on stage, but you're constantly trying to make a series of moving pictures that are balanced and beautiful with bodies, with live bodies. And so we work a lot on that with positioning. we'll play music and then we'll stop it. Kind of like the old musical chairs thing, except when it stops, you have to find your spot on stage facing the audience. And obviously, if you're downstage toward the audience, you don't have as much control as the people behind you. So if you're behind, you have to find a window and a pose. What is your body doing? Where are you in relation to where other people are, where other characters are? And then what are your feet doing? You know, where is your focus? Where are your eyes? Where are your, what are you doing in this moment besides just standing on stage in a spot? And so that whole awareness is really fun with the kids because they come in, especially when they're little, they're terrible at it. They just don't get it. We keep working at it and keep working at it. And, even in one season from the start to the end, what you see on stage it's transferring into the shows. They get it. They're like, oh yeah, I can't be here because I'm right behind, Austin. I can't stand behind Austin. I have to at least step out. And so it's really fun to teach some of that and to watch those skills absolutely be gobbled up. They get it. They want to be so good. They want it. They don't know how to do it yet.
Yeah, I want to say that, well, first of all, so our exhibit is nonprofit theater groups in Northwest Minnesota that primarily work with children and youth. So Jane, could you just tell us a little bit about how long you've been in your position and just a little bit about the group in Thief River?
Sure. Well, the Thief River Falls Area Community Theater, it's kind of complicated because it's actually been on the books since the 1970s, but it was very prolific and active in this community until I want to say like maybe the late 1980s, early 90s. And, as with all groups or many groups, they kind of ebb and flow, and it had really hit the skids. They hadn't done anything for a while. And when I moved back to town, first of all, I had no intention of staying here. I thought I can't be here. There's no performance art for me. What is, but people kept coming to me and saying, gosh, we should get together and start a community theater. Warroad has one. I remember Jim and Jan Strand, they kept saying, Warroad's got a summer theater and, whatever. So my thought was, yeah, you guys should start a theater and I'll act in it. That'd be great. But that didn't happen. So they just kept hammering on me. And so we resurrected this organization and we became the Thief River Falls Area Community Theater. It was an umbrella organization. It was originally created as an umbrella organization, but there really weren't individuals that were willing to provide leadership for the other branches. But there was a very strong theater group, big interest. So that's how we began. So I have been with the community theater here since then, which I think that was like 1995 or so. And I was a volunteer, mostly doing real background stuff because I was newly married and had then in the next few years had 3 little children. But I was writing grants. Mara taught me how to write grants. And just doing, whatever I could, publicity and researching shows and all of that stuff that I could do from home. And I did that. I did act in a couple of shows, but it was tough. It was fun, but it was hard with tiny little kids. And then about, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I was hired as the executive director. And because we wanted to grow, we'd been talking about these kids shows and these kids programs literally for probably 2 decades. Like, this is what we should do. But there was just nobody that had that kind of time. It is time consuming. You don't see everything that goes on. And if you're going to do it right, you need to put the time in. If you're going to schedule it right, if you're going to set the program up right, if you're going to handle it right and have the right personnel and and all of that stuff, you need to have somebody who's really like invested in it and has the time to handle it and to manage it and all of that. And so they hired me, and one of the first things we did was, let's get these kids programs going. And so we started with the teen program, which we did a junior version of Seussical. And oh my gosh, we didn't know what we were doing. It was harrowing at times, and we didn't get enough kids for the cast. So we had to bring in a ringer. We said we wouldn't take kids who were already graduated, but we had one who had just graduated and was willing to come back. And he provided, like the leading role, thank goodness. But it turned out to be such an interesting project because the end result was great. And what we learned from it was that our chorus kids, I think sometimes chorus kids really don't get enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
They sit and wait. Well, because we didn't have as many kids as we were originally planning on, those chorus kids were on stage more than the leads were. And we took time during rehearsals, which we didn't plan enough of those either. But we've never done this before, but we devoted, I think, most of our rehearsal period to chorus people changing costumes backstage and absolutely like orchestrating and timing out those costume changes. And so it was very interesting. They learned a lot. But I mean, you talk to them today. I was just talking to one kid who she's graduated from high school, but who was in that first show as Ellie Brixen. And she was telling me all the parts that she did. And it was pretty amazing. I think they each had 6 costume changes or around there. And some of them were like walking off stage, walking back around a curtain and coming back on stage, completely transformed into something else. And we're not talking just like a hat. We are talking full blown head to toe. And so it's really interesting, what you can do when you need to, and thinking through those logistics, and then what it does for the performer. Because once they had that down, they had so much fun, were so proud of themselves, and they felt like, we aren't just in the chorus. We are vital to this operation. I need to get back on stage in 24 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so it was really fun. And a lot of those kids had never done anything before. They had no idea what they were in for. And so we had 8 rehearsals from start to finish. Which we'll do that show again, but it'll be with more than 8 rehearsals, let me tell you. That was kind of a nightmare. I was chewing my fingernails down to the quick at night, couldn't sleep, just worrying about how this is all going to work. And if the first show was a disaster, you know what that does. So that was kind of our start. And it was really a great start to a program. We had a lot of people who saw it that said, I had no idea that this is what this was going to be. I still have that. I have parents who somebody came up to me after the little kids show this past summer, whose kid was in it for the first time. I actually had one from Beauty and the Beast too, who said, I didn't know this was going to be like this. Mm-hmm. We not only do we work with the kids, but we do everything we can within our budget and our means to really provide like the best sets we can possibly get, costumes that are lovely. I remember being a kid and being in shows where I was in the chorus and I got a terrible costume. And I remember as a kid thinking, this just ruined the whole show. I don't even like it anymore because I hate my costume. And I know they didn't even, I'm so insignificant that they didn't even put any time in to give me a good costume. I remember that. And so I think when I costume, because I do a lot of costuming too, when I costume kids, I just absolutely pull out all the stops I can to just get them out on stage looking fabulous. And they love it. Oh my gosh. Costume, they come the first day. When are we going to try on costumes? We don't even have them yet.
Yeah, and those props that you provided are awesome.
Well, thank you. I think it's also a really, really great way to pull other people in. Like that snakehead, that caw from
Right.
Jungle Book is a work of art.
Mhm.
And to be able to pull somebody like Lori Dale in, to do that kind of thing is just fantastic. So to be able to incorporate some of that, I forget which show it was many years ago, but we actually had Pat Dunning come in and paint with the kids. And then we did a little display in the lobby of their paintings during the actual run of the show, which was neat because then when they went out into the lobby after the show was over and their friends and family were there, they would make sure that they showed them their artwork that they did too. And so, it was kind of fun to pull some of that in. If we had more time, we probably would do more of that. There's always things you can do. I have a million ideas, and sometimes you just have to pick and choose.
Can you talk more about the exhibit, the things that you have in the exhibit?
We have a little bit of everything from soup to nuts. Unfortunately, some props can't survive because they're fragile or they're just too large. And so there were a few of those that I was like, oh, darn, that would have been neat. But we have a costume or two out there. One is just a chorus person, a town person from Beauty and the Beast. But it's really rather lovely. And it's an interesting costume, I think. When I costume, I try to incorporate color, texture, pattern, style. And I try to, like, if there's 20 people in the chorus, I will actually lay out 20 costumes on the floor in the hallway to make sure they coordinate with one another. If there's, let's say there's, you're dealing with a color palette and you've got red and gray and blue with maybe a little bit of yellow as an accent color. And then you got somebody in green, it stands out like a sore thumb. So I always do that and just try to make it look, again, it's a series of moving pictures. You wouldn't throw, lime green into a painting. So we kind of, we do that and sort of try to create that as part of the work of art. What was the original question? And again, I can't even remember. I went off on a tangent down the rabbit hole.
Oh, about the things that you have in the exhibit.
Oh, yes. So there's a costume. There are some little hand props. We even have some cool shoes.
Yeah.
I know we have a pair of gold boots that Conrad Birdie wore in Bye Bye Birdie that were he just looks so fabulous. I think he had a gold jacket on too. David Miller did such a good job with that whole character. What else do we have out there? We've got photos. We've got a lot of photos of kids over the years, which is really a lot of fun. I know we have, as I said, the head and the body from Ka, which was Jungle Book. The head is actually paper-mache built onto a bicycle helmet. We found that bicycle helmets are fabulous because, first of all, they provide a really great they're hard. They don't move around back and forth and whatever. You've got those two straps that come down. You can move the straps so that they custom fit the kid's head. So if it is a fast, costume change, plunk, click, go. But she also designed a body for the snake. So I think there was 5 or 6 kids that were Ka, that played Ka. So the first one wore the head, and then the rest of them they all had, I think, green unitards on head to toe with these kind of like sandwich board body parts, pieces on of the snake. And then the last one had the tail. And then they would move, they danced around the stage and they moved so that it really was cool. It was this big snake that could follow whatever the characters around and dance. And so that was a lot of fun. What else do we have out there, Trey? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was just looking at my phone to find photos. I couldn't find them, but you've got there's the different headpieces. You talked a little bit about some of them.
Oh, yes.
There's 3 different headpieces.
From Beauty and the Beast, I'd forgotten about that. So we kind of a collective effort. So Dina Halsa works with me with costumes. And a lot of times Dina says, oh, I don't design or anything. I hem and you do all the rest of that. That's what I don't like design. Wow. I found this lampshade. It was one that kind of goes like that, it has kind of a nice curve to it, and it was brown. And I looked at it and I thought, that looks like a clock head. And so I just mentioned that to her, and she took it and made it into Cogsworth's headpiece, and it was brilliant. I didn't even know she took it, but it was brilliant. So she did that one. I did Chip's. Chip is the little teacup. I took a lampshade. Lampshades are great headpieces. I took it, I put it on upside down so it went like this, and then built a handle onto it and put some kind of applied a crack thing to it with some sticker deals. But so that was Chip's. And then the other one is Mrs. Potts' headpiece. Now that was in existence, but it didn't work. But it was from an old production. I don't know who built it. Actually, it was decades ago, but it was in our storage, and it was squashed up and it needed help. But Key Teeters took it home, and just, I don't know what she did to it, but it's like she breathed miracle into it, and it just looked great. So it fit into the costume, and we were able to, have these fabulous headpieces on these kids. They're beautiful.
Yeah, and there's some advertising that's in there. So you've got these really nice banners, which I think your boys, Mara, they were much younger.
Yes.
Are in that. So it's very nice. It's a great gallery, and I just want to mention we have 3 groups. So we also have the Foston Theater Group and Middle River group, along with Thief River Falls. So yeah, and this gallery is 2 months, and we're just entering the 2nd month, and so people can take a look at that. It's at Northland Community Technical College in Thief River Falls, and it goes until the end of November. And the gallery's open during the college regular business hours from 8:30 to 5 each day. And the best way to go in is to go to the front of the college and enter door B. And then the gallery's right there when you walk in.
We had a good time putting that thing together, didn't we, Trey?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was nice because usually I'm there for a day or two setting it all up, and Jane brought all of her items in and said, "Are you okay if I set up some of it?" And I said, "That would be awesome." So yeah, thank you. I think it looks really nice. Yeah.
Well, in my job, I kind of travel around and see, some of the other theater groups that are doing things with kids. And since you mentioned Foston, I went to when they did Shrek down there in Foston. I was en route, and I thought, oh, it's my husband and I, let's stop in and see Shrek. And they had the way that they did Shrek is I almost think and maybe Shrek is written this way as a play, but almost anybody that said, I want to be Shrek or Fiona, they were able to be it. So people were switching into Shrek and Fiona, like the whole show practically. They had, I think because of that, like you said, was Seussical, and Austin was in Bye Bye Birdie, which was your second show. and he played a ton of characters. I'm like,
Yes.
oh my goodness, Austin's on stage again. Like he was an old man and he's just like bopping all over the place. And so then when I watched Shrek, Foston has a much, much smaller theater than you do in Thief River Falls, so, or Crookston or Hallock or what we're used to. Warren is big too. So they have this small theater and they have to navigate that with quite a few kids on stage sometimes, and they have their props and stuff. So things were kind of going awry in the performance, and those of us there were just kind of chuckling like, oh my gosh, that fell off that door, like things were just, people were bumping into things. So then it was going awry. And these Shreks were switching and these Fionas, and you're like just watching this whole thing unravel a bit, but then it came back together. And at the end, Farquhar, they had him playing on his knees. He was a little taller and they had him down on his knees. So he was shuffling around and kind of on this little thing. And he was doing his lines, and the donkey was really good, which if you have a good donkey in Shrek, that helps a ton. Like he was a consistent character and he was very good. And Abby would probably laugh at this story because she was there, I'm sure. And she's probably thinking, oh no, Mara's in the audience and all this stuff is going awry, So then towards the end, the one of the guys was back around the corner from the donkey and the Farquhar scene, and the crown started to fall off, and the person behind the little kid just slowly used the sword and lifted the crown back on and placed it on the other child's head like his friend. They kept acting the whole time.
I love it.
As audience, you couldn't help but laugh because you're watching him lift the crown. But that's such a kid thing to do. They're like, they don't always throw each other under the bus. They're like, I can help this. I can get that crown back on, and oh my gosh, we just laughed. And those fun memories of being in the audience with kids shows are priceless. Like they're so funny when you think back on what can happen in a kid's show sometimes.
Well, when you talked about Bye Bye Birdie, it reminded me of the scene Beauty School Dropout. So I believe there were probably at least 20 girls in that choreographed number. So it was what's his name? Like Frankie Avalon character that sang. And then there was all these girls in this number. But the problem is those girls were all in the chorus and they were in the scene beforehand. So we needed to get 20 girls out of like their teeny bopper, saddle shoes and all that, and transformed into these beauty school. So Dina's brilliant. She is brilliant. We were trying to figure out, okay, so we need capes on them. And then like we decided we were going to use these colored wigs. So they were like page boy wigs, and they were, I think, like a raspberry pink and a turquoise and I think green. But how are we going to get them? I mean, I'm not kidding you. It was like a 20-second costume change. So she went out to the Dollar Tree and bought white round plastic tablecloths, snipped the end, and then boink goes over the kid's head. So that as they were running off stage, there was an assembly line backstage. Mm-hmm. There were like 3 people putting capes on and 3 people just putting wigs on. Like, put the wig on. There goes the wig pin. Go, go, go. And there was just this line coming off stage, going on stage, coming off stage, going on stage. And then they did this big dance. And it was like, how did they do that? And we only lost 1 wig in 3 performances and 3 dress rehearsals. We lost 1 wig. So it's just amazing. It's fun. Sometimes it's nerve-wracking, but it's always fun to see how is this going to work? How is this going to, how is this all going to play out? Yeah. And it always does. And even when there are mistakes, you just go with it. It goes.
Yeah. And it's such an accepting, most of the time, it's such an accepting place for kids that are just kind of I don't know, just things aren't necessarily going right for them sometimes, and yet theater can be such an escape, where they are, you know, and right now a lot of things are talked about with inclusivity and diversity, and you know, kids that have are trying to work out their sexual orientation or their gender related what they're going through. Theater can be a really good place for that, an accepting place. So I appreciate what Thief River Falls has done to um, just right at the forefront say we accept all in, and we treat everyone with respect and all of that. So I think that's pretty cool. Within that show, that Grease show was a good one to just show, you know, people that are just kind of wherever they're at, we're gonna respect them and treat them well. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. It's interesting how kids respond to others and what they're going through. And I think we have never had any problems. And one of the things that we do is the first day, we introduce everyone, try to get to know each other. And then we have the speech every year about how you treat each other. And it is your job to treat others well. You don't have to like them, but you just have to tolerate. If it's somebody you don't care for, walk away, treat them well, you know, help each other out. Some of you older kids, you've been around. Some of you younger kids don't know how it works. Older kids, you are responsible to help them out, you know, and we just give them this little speech every year. And I think it works. These are the expectations. The expectations are that you treat others well. And I don't know, maybe theater kids are just nicer, but we haven't had a lot of conflict with that. We've had some, you know, but we usually just hit it head on, deal with it, and it resolves.
Well, I have a school right now that that has tried to do a youth show, and they haven't succeeded. So I'm just kind of reminding them that there's these other summer activities that pull from a wider area that your kids could drive there, or a parent could drive them there, or whatever, and giving an example of what I did with my kids, and what other people in this area in the valley that are close to Grand Forks have did with SPA. You know, SPA serves as that same program in Grand Forks, and they are being honest about the fact that a couple of boys who are into theater are definitely being bullied around, that's like a bad way of being, is to be in theater. So so I think the programs like yours help normalize that again, that they can have fun and they can just be who they are, and not have it be that that somebody is bullying them from the side for their creative endeavor that they really enjoy. And of course, we all know some of the superstar Hollywood people of the world are not anyone that would ever be bullied. I mean, they're the superstars out there. So I think that is interesting, that unfortunately some youth in our area can feel like an interest in theater puts them in a place that might be embarrassing, even though they have a ton of talent, and it shouldn't be. Like it would be nice to keep moving that dialogue into a healthy place. And I'm always glad when the kids that are involved have a really proud reaction to what they put on stage, so that they can just talk it like this is great. Like, I loved being in this. Like, this was a wonderful experience, and I learned so much, and kind of switch the narrative around that. So.
Oh, amen. It kind of breaks my heart, because we've had boys who are just phenomenally talented, but they're so afraid to let their light shine. And it seems like once you get a group of boys in who are confident about what they're doing and joyful and proud, others will follow. but it's really hard to find those confident boys. I mean, girls, we get girls by the hordes. And I wish that we could, we had a really strong group of boys before COVID, and then some of them timed out during COVID and didn't return for whatever reason. And so we're trying to build that back up again. And I really think the best way to do that is to get them when they're young, when they're in the elementary group, because I think sometimes, middle school and high school can be a little bit time of intimidation. And it seems like when they're younger and they have some success with it, enjoy it, get the positive feedback, maybe they'll be more confident going into those middle school and high school years. It's coming back. We had more this past summer than the summer before. And I am hopeful that it will continue on that upward trajectory, but who knows? It's always harder to get boys in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just have to clone those boys of yours and
well, we had 3, which was fun.
Yes,
Like we had a third boy. So it wasn't just one family. It was that it was fun to go over and be part of a group and step up their talent level with what they could do back in Warren again, which was really, really helpful. But the few of us that were sharing the carpooling, you just did that. Like one drove over and stayed for one day, or you just kind of jockeyed it around to make sure you could get them there. Yeah. Which will always be a barrier for those outside of the main communities that do this. It's figuring out how to engage both the kid wanting to try out, but also the parent committing to get them to the location, until they can drive.
Yes.
And I remember like when Spencer, when he turned old enough to drive, the other mother, Lisa, and I were like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. Like now we just have a driver.
Yes.
So then he carted the 3 of them over, and that worked out really well. But then COVID hit, I think if COVID wouldn't have hit, the community of some of those kids would have kept gelling all the way through them aging out, because they had that energy right then, and yet COVID did change the dynamic, and they started to take jobs and stuff. So so you have a new crew now. You have a new crew.
Yeah, they're coming. They're coming. They did well last summer, and I don't remember what the percentage was now. I had figured it out, but the percentage of returnees from 2021 to 2022 was very good. It was something like 82% of the kids who were eligible to come back came back. So, and then that still opens up for newcomers. We're always looking for newcomers. And if anybody's listening from out of the Thief River Falls area, we love to have kids from other communities come in. They brought in some interesting dynamics, friendships. Like my daughter is still like friends with Mara's kids, and with some kids from Red Lake Falls that she went through the program with. I don't know if they still have their little group chat or whatever, but for a while there, it was constantly, she was telling me about what, those kids were up to and going to the graduation parties and this, that, and the other thing. And so I think it's kind of healthy to get to know kids that are outside of your normal, group of friends and acquaintances, and to realize that, there's all these people out there that have interests that are similar, and we can connect, with them. So it's been really good in that way.
Yeah, it can be a real bridge towards anything they do after school, high school, that I can be involved in some of this in college or in community when I'm in community. So I think that'll really serve them in life, definitely, that they'll.
Well, even if they go to college and decide, I had fun in theater, I should try out for something. What a great social group. It's hard sometimes to break into a social group in college that is like-minded and that you really enjoy hanging out with socially. But things like music and theater, I mean, when I went to college, if it hadn't been for music and theater friends, I don't know that I would have had any friends. I mean, those are the people that I hung out with all the time, and they probably kept me in college. There's that component of social in college that is proven. If a kid can connect socially in college, they're much more likely to retain, to stay, to finish. And so I think the arts are a great way to do that.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's it can be your people, and yet if it, I don't know, I think like sometimes I view it like, I'm just kind of talking through briefly before we end about what can feel like was your thing in high school, and then you get to college, and that's such a tight clique of people that are in that major that you never really feel in. But if it is your passion, you can keep trying out a little bit and learning how to try out and having that exposure no matter what the results
Right.
are. Because sometimes they're just casting theater majors in college and you just can't get your toe in the door. At least that's what I found with my older son. And it still builds you to think, as I move into what you guys are doing with community theater, that I like that environment. Like, it's fun for me as something that enhances my life, provides a lot of quality of life to my life, is to be part of this company and bring that forward. So I'm always hopeful that kids have enough of a positive, like a high positive, that they desire it as they live the whole rest of their life in adulthood, which is a big chunk of time, So,
Yes.
so to think of what that was for them and to re-engage and put it back out there here and there in the future for our different communities that are doing great work, but need new, fresh auditioners for their young adult roles too. Those 20-year-old roles that you're like, oh, it'd just be nice to get some more 25 to 35-year-olds trying out, so people see different people on stage. So I think that it's all kind of a process, and yet with so many of you doing youth theater and in different ways, our office likes to support that. So if there's ways that we can improve the quality of some of the other groups through granting or better being able to afford, like sometimes, Jane, I know you can imagine, but just buying one of those backdrops that are pre-painted and you put them behind the kids can make such a difference for the way the stage looks. And if our grant can help some of the theater groups do that, like to take a risk and say, I'm going to order that kind of funky backdrop that looks like the swamp for Shrek, like that can transform your stage in just a moment to show something.
Exactly. They're very expensive. I'm not going to lie. They're pretty expensive. However, when you think about how much it would cost to build anything that would make that kind of impact, what it would cost in hours, in labor, they're not so bad.
They're not.
So if you ever have anybody that's wondering about that, or that you might even suggest, have them get a hold of me, because I work with some companies and I kind of know which ones I know are a little better than others, and who really are big on customer service and how it all works. It's easy. You got to know your dimensions, but that's not so hard. You have to have something to hang it up on. You've got to have a batten over the stage that can handle some weight. Other than that, it comes in a box, you unfold it, you hang it, and it's done.
It's done.
It's done. And it's really interesting because when we use backdrops, the stage looks like nothing. And then about 3 days before the show opens, we hang the backdrop up and everything just comes alive. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is interesting to think through, like just I did that playwright thing, and we have a few more playwrights going on. So at some point, maybe we'll try to see if one of you that does things in theater wants to try to do some original plays by some of these kids too. Because the last playwright that I attended in workshop to write a play quickly in Park Rapids had almost all high schoolers.
Oh, cool.
It was super primarily like high school, very young adult. So there's this vibe of I can do it and write that in amongst those kids that are kind of writer, direct. They're a different person than who's on your stage. Sometimes they're more,
Sure.
They can see the picture in their head and they desire putting it down with writing. And then like, from your group, you've had youth involved in this too, but it becomes readers theater pretty much.
Sure.
Like a little bit of acting, but mainly readers theater. But it's a
That's
cool
cool.
way of encouraging original production, in theater.
Yeah.
So, and can open the like lights to a whole nother aspect of performing arts for some kids related to, I can put my own thing on stage, and
Right.
Before they have that, I can't do it, they have the I can do it mode going on, so so it's kind of a neat experience, a different way, and we haven't had that in our region yet, but it is in the Park Rapids area. It's down in Grand Forks a little bit, but it would be fun to have it in our region too.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
We lost Trey, Kristen. He's gone.
We did. He had another meeting.
Oh,
and
okay.
We should probably wrap this up.
Yep.
But is there anything else any points you want to make or things you want people to know?
I don't think so. I'm just really thankful that the Northwest Minnesota Arts Council is there to support us, not only financially, but man, I've gotten such great advice over the years and help. And the publicity that you do for us is it is so nice to have that support in the region. We'd probably still be doing this, but we would not be doing it at the level we are. And we kind of hit the realization several years ago, probably about 12 years ago, that we need to up our game. This is getting kind of boring. we need to make this better, because we'd have a show that was good, and then we'd have one that was kind of a stinker. And it was just because it wasn't being consistently nurtured. And so, that's been so helpful, and we're so appreciative.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if there's other things that you think we can do to, coordinate some training, like I know many of you have talked about how it's hard to find directors, for instance. Maybe we could bring in someone who could help people feel like they could step into that role and learn more, like a little mini training session on how to become a good director of a play. So there's some of those things that kind of build the infrastructure where maybe a variety of people come from different areas to join this little series of trainings. Those type of things would be good for the long-term health of all these programs in our area. So
yes.
Yep.
Directors and technicians. All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to end the broadcast.
Okay. Thank you.